During my childhood and adolescent years, I got used to the idea of school proms being a certain type of way. Crowded, loud, extravagantly decorated, and very heteronormative, where it's typically the guy asking the girl out to prom and going as each other's dates. When there's a dance floor and the DJ starts playing a slow dance song, it's pretty much guaranteed that you will only see the girls being paired off with the boys, and they're dancing with their arms wrapped awkwardly around each other. Even when I refer to media and entertainment from those days, which was supposed to provide us with some escapism, most of the prom scenes you'd see in various television shows and movies were centered around straight couples. In the 90s, we have Boy Meets World and Saved by the Bell. Then there's A Cinderella Story and Mean Girls in the early 2000s. Even the cartoons I used to watch didn't stray far from the reality of what proms were back then. If you asked me 10 years ago, which was around the time I was finishing high school, to picture two boys or two girls going to prom as each other's dates, I would find the concept difficult to imagine. But did you know in 1979, in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, it was the first time that an openly gay couple was hosted in a high school prom? Unsurprisingly, this did not come without some pushback, as the couple was threatened by homophobic classmates with tarring and feathering. If you don't know what that is, here's the Wikipedia definition. Just awful. But the LGBT community is extremely persistent and are not one to back down, because several years later, in 1995, the first ever gay prom was hosted in none other than Los Angeles, California. As the saying goes, no matter how many times you get knocked down, keep getting back up. So gay people have been represented in proms for decades now, and we're not just talking about being in the background, but have been center stage as well. It's just the process of gaining widespread inclusion or even recognition is a slow but gradual one. And so, when looking back on some of the milestones achieved in the past decade, it's amazing to see how far we've come. In 2011, the students at Sanford High School in Maine crowned Christian Jensen and Caleb Jett as their first ever gay prom king and queen. More recently, in 2016, Bree Grimes and Lindsay Creel, girlfriends at the time, were crowned prom king and queen in Leon High School in Florida. And let's not forget about the trans community, because in 2019, Ellen Belmont from Indianapolis became the nation's first ever trans prom king. Despite all of these wonderful accomplishments, we need to be aware that even in today's world, not every state or school is as open and accommodating to their LGBT students when it comes to prom. According to the National School Climate Survey, 26.5% of US students reported that their schools prevented students from attending a school dance with someone of the same gender. And here are some specific examples that made headlines. Transgender teens prom king nomination blocked by school district. Students petition for change. A transgender student said he's being forced to run for prom queen even though he was nominated as prom king. Unlike the 80s or 90s or even the early 2000s, we are lucky to now have the power of social media and subsequently the power of word of mouth to mobilize movements in order to fight against bigotry and discrimination. The long-standing journey of LGBT tolerance and acceptance in the sacred institution that is prom is also reflected on our television screens. In the 20th century, which was the 1900s, there were little to absolutely no portrayals of gay couples in prom-centric episodes in any mainstream TV show or movie you could think of back then. But what changed the game for everyone was the depiction of Brian and Justin's prom experience in the hit serial drama series Queer as Folk. And the specific episode I'm referring to is Season 1, Episode 22, titled Full Circle, which aired back in 2001. I think this is one of the first episodes in mainstream television to feature a gay couple going to prom together. In the episode, Justin is about to graduate high school and his senior prom is coming up. He decides to ask his boyfriend Brian, who's about to turn 30, out to prom. By the way, Justin is 18 years old, so it's all legal just so you know, but definitely something you don't see every day. Anyways, Brian initially declines the invite because why would any 30-year-old go to a high school prom unless they're the chaperone or something? Eventually, something triggered in Brian that caused him to take the L and go to prom with Justin as his date. It was really cute to see them dancing together romantically in front of everyone without a care in the world. Although at the beginning, it did come as a shock to most people seeing two guys dancing, but as the moment sank in longer, I could see more and more people warming up to the couple, and I even spot some genuine smiles amongst the crowd. To top it all off, the dance ends with Brian and Justin sharing a kiss in front of the spectators, which was such a defining moment in television since the episode aired 20 years ago. But for a progressive show like Queer as Folk, it's not all surprising if you really think about it. Okay, I won't leave out the part where Justin got bashed in the head by his bully Hops in the parking lot afterwards. It did kind of put a damper on their prom night, but you know what? Screw Hops. Let's just forget about him and focus on the amazing experience Brian and Justin shared prior to the incident. Following in the footsteps of Queer as Folk, other popular shows like Glee and 13 Reasons Why took note of all of this and put out their own prom-centric episodes which featured LGBTQ characters or couples. In 2020, there's even a whole musical movie that's dedicated to the challenges of holding queer-friendly high school proms, appropriately titled Prom, which I will get to very soon. But first, let's talk about two of Glee's prom episodes, which were centered around McKinley High's junior prom and senior prom in Season 2 and Season 3 respectively. Kurt and Blaine, aka Klaine, mostly represented the LGBT community on both occasions. In Season 2's prom episode, Kurt asks Blaine out to prom, to which he says yes, but was pretty reluctant about it since he did get beat up by 3 guys the last time he went to a school dance with another boy. Fortunately, we didn't see any gay bashing in this episode, unlike what went down in Queer as Folk, but Kurt did have to suffer the embarrassment of being crowned prom queen due to an overwhelming number of write-in votes, which, safe to say, it was done as a joke to try to humiliate him. Kurt understandably runs off, but after cooling down and getting a pep talk from Blaine, he decides to bravely stand up to the haters and gets back on stage to get his crown with all the confidence in the world.
Eat your heart out, Kate Middleton.
This will forever be one of my favorite episodes of Glee. I love how Kurt didn't let some stupid prank get to him and ruin this special night with his boyfriend. It was also inspiring to watch. On the other hand, we got to experience the dilemma students in real life have to face with the tough decision of coming out through Dave Karofsky's character. And that was just as important to showcase to the audience as well. The third season's prom episode was less Klaine focused, but they still had some really nice moments. Remembering last year's write-in fiasco, Kurt and Blaine are both reluctant to attend their senior prom, so they decide to attend Rachel's anti-prom instead. To no one's shock, anti-prom turned out to be a major bust, and they all head over to their real prom at the last minute, and Klaine ended up slow dancing together with no one questioning it. Next, we have 13 Reasons Why's prom episode in Season 4. Now, if you ask me to rank the 3 shows I've brought up so far based on LGBTQ inclusivity in their respective prom episodes, 13 Reasons Why wins hands down, and that's mostly because there were 4 gay couples featured in their prom, unlike the 2 other shows which only had 1 couple if I'm not mistaken. We first have the main couple, Alex and Charlie, who just go so well together like PB and J. Charlie's attempts at asking Alex out to prom will forever have me swooning. I just love how romantic he is. Next, we have Tony and Caleb, who are also pretty great themselves. Then at some point during prom, Winston imagines Monty, who is dead by the way, in his head and dances with him. Strange, but I guess good on Winston for getting that closure. And the last gay couple, which came as a shock to a lot of us, even to the characters themselves, is Principal Foundry and his husband Josh.
Foundry's gay?
Mind's blown.
My thoughts exactly. In comparison to the other two shows I've mentioned, I really think that 13 Reasons Why's prom episode is the most queer inclusive one. Like Glee's Kurt, Alex was crowned prom king/queen, but 13 Reasons Why took it a step further and gave the other crown to Charlie as well. And this wasn't done as some sick joke because pretty much everyone in school knows that Alex and Charlie are dating. I think the reason why this particular prom episode was smooth sailing for its LGBTQ characters is not only because this show was set in today's age, where LGBT acceptance is a lot better than before, but also Jessica is good friends with Alex, and she's pretty much the prom's organizer and the main reason why prom was back on in the first place after there were threats to cancel it. Moreover, like I mentioned earlier, the principal himself is gay, and that definitely played a role in creating a safe space for queer folks at prom. Another thing I really like about this episode is how Alex was able to be so vulnerable at the end after winning the crown unexpectedly.
I think I'm in love with you.
Despite dealing with so many distractions and internal turmoil, Alex was able to put all of that aside for just a moment to dance with Charlie and then express his love to him and kiss him while everyone watched on. Also, listening to Clay describing prom the way he did definitely struck a chord with me.
Nothing was lost. We were just there. Free. Alive.
I think what he said applies so much to the LGBT community because we want to have these kinds of romantic moments in our own proms without being judged on our own personal preferences. All we want really is to attend these kinds of events as our true selves and to not be viewed as something wrong or less than, you know? Oh, and I want to give a special shout out to the Fosters for featuring an LGBT prom in Season 3, Episode 4, way before the movie Prom, which another favorite gay couple of mine, Jude and Connor, attended and shared a heartwarming dance together. So cute. Now let's talk about Netflix's Prom because that's a movie that pretty much encompasses most of the things I've talked about here. If you haven't watched Prom yet, it's about 4 Broadway celebrities whose careers are dwindling, and in order to regain their popularity, they decide to join forces and help out a 17-year-old lesbian in high school who isn't allowed to take her girlfriend to prom as her date thanks to the homophobic PTA led by her girlfriend's mom, ironically. Unlike Glee, 13 Reasons Why, and Queer as Folk's prom-centric episodes, Ryan Murphy's Prom is a 2-hour film that's designed to put a spotlight on a plethora of issues surrounding LGBT representation in proms, such as dealing with pushback from parents, the internal struggles LGBTQ+ students face, especially if they are still in the closet, which is what Emma, the main character's girlfriend Alyssa, went through, similar to Dave's character in Glee. We need to remember that the people who go to these proms are teenagers, and making the decision to come out as lesbian or gay or bi or trans is a difficult thing to do at that age. They feel immense pressure to hide who they really are due to so many reasons. Even full-grown adults struggle with the coming out process. So I like how this movie incorporated this aspect into the storyline because it's a realistic situation that LGBT teenagers tend to go through. Like, I so relate to that flashback of a young Barry going to his high school prom where he saw his crush taking a girl to prom and that left him devastated. But please note that nobody should feel like they have to come out if they don't think it's necessary. I also want to briefly talk about the controversy involving James Corden, who is straight in real life, playing a gay character because there was quite some buzz on the internet about this casting decision a while back. If you ask me, I'm personally fine with straight actors taking on gay roles because hello, it's freaking acting. But I will admit, I straight up did not like the gay accent he put on in a number of scenes. It's crazily exaggerated and it also sounded pretty unnatural to him, which made me feel uncomfortable just listening to it.
1, shut up. 2, I refuse to give up, okay? We're still celebrities. We still have power.
Anyway, that's just my opinion. I think the movie was really spot on in explaining to the audience the reason why prom matters so much to the LGBTQ+ community. On a critical note, however, the movie did end on an overtly optimistic note, which, don't get me wrong, I understand why it ended that way since this is a musical comedy movie after all, but I just find it strange that Mrs. Green went from being this super homophobic person and totally against gay couples attending prom for majority of the film to now seemingly being okay with her daughter Alyssa kissing Emma in the inclusive prom at the end. Almost happy even, which was really strange. She was even included in the movie's closing dance number. That was a bit too much. But again, I guess every musical comedy film has to end on a happy note, right? By the way, Emma's inclusive prom totally gives me She-Ra and the Princesses of Power's princess prom vibes. Wow, that was a mouthful to say. Like everything from the venue to the attendees, it looks so magical. I really think this prom should be the standard that all high school proms should strive to be, which is being accommodating to everyone from all shapes, sizes, sexual orientation, gender identity, you name it. Now speaking of princess prom, let's move on to the portrayal of queer-centric proms in cartoons, specifically in Western animation. Surprisingly or possibly unsurprisingly, depending on how your perception is towards modern animation, the portrayals are far more positive in comparison to the live-action shows I've mentioned, although they came at a much later time, I would say. I believe 2018 was the year we got to watch the first ever prom in a cartoon that featured same-sex couples and that was in Netflix's She-Ra. I thought Star and the Forces of Evil was the first cartoon to have one, but turns out what you see here is a concert instead. So if I'm not mistaken, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power was the first animated show to showcase a queer-centric prom, specifically in episode 8 of season 1. Princess Prom took place in the Kingdom of Snows, and it was a chance for Adora, Bo, and Glimmer to convince Princess Frosta to join the rebellion, but it's also a chance for the Horde to ruin it. Here, we saw a bunch of male and female same-sex couples, and even non-binary couples as the background prom guests. The main villains at the time, Catra and Scorpia, got to go together as each other's dates. But if you're a true Netflix She-Ra stan like me, you should know the one part that made the entire fandom go ha! Gay! And that was, of course, Adora and Catra's prom dance. As I was watching the episode for like the 15th time, I definitely got the sense that Princess Prom is an open and inclusive environment, one that I would feel comfortable being myself in. Well, excluding the moment when Catra and Scorpia decided to blow up Frosta's castle, but you get the idea. 2 years later, in 2020, there are 2 other animated shows that prominently featured same-sex couples. The first was Kipo's prom episodes in season 3 episodes 8 and 9, where Benson asked Troy out to prom, and they both share a kiss immediately afterwards. The promposal scene was certainly more romantic than the actual prom itself, in my opinion. You can listen to me talk more about Troy and Benson, aka Troyson, in greater detail in another video of mine that was posted last year, and I will include a link to that video right here. The second animated show was Disney's The Owl House, with its main characters, Luz and Amity. Despite not being a couple yet, they did share a cute dance together, which was awesome to see, and it was revealed towards the end that Amity actually wanted to ask Luz out to their prom, but didn't because she was afraid of getting rejected.
Who did you want to ask out? Oh, it's not important.
Overall, prom-centric episodes in cartoon shows are painted in a much happier tone compared to their live-action show counterparts, which makes sense since cartoons are usually targeted at kids, although adults like me love them. In conclusion, being able to watch all of these so-called queer-centric, prom-centric episodes in mainstream TV shows and films I've talked about has meant so much to me and so many people who are part of the LGBTQ+ community because prom has historically been a special event that alienates those who don't follow a conventional path. So these shows provide that much needed escapism for all of us. It's all fiction and fantasy, of course, but it's something that should continuously give us the inspiration to work together as a community and to build a world where having LGBT couples in proms is universally accepted and actually celebrated. That being said, I also think that prom is what you make it to be. For me, personally, prom wasn't such a big deal at my school, and I merely treated it as a fun night out for me and my friends. For some people, prom might mean a lot to them, whether it's the opportunity to create long-lasting memories with their boyfriend or girlfriend, or the chance for them to take a giant leap of faith and ask a crush out to the grand event, which might or might not turn out so well for the person who's promposing.
Well, that's just creepy.
But like what Ryan Murphy's Prom taught us, prom should be that one time of the school year where we are given the freedom to express ourselves as authentically as possible, and just as importantly, to have the best time of our lives. Also, my high school prom happened about a decade ago, so society's tolerance or acceptance towards inclusive proms during that time was definitely lower compared to where it is now. The norm back then was either the guy takes the girl out to prom, like I said earlier, or you would just go with your friends or go stag if you're about that life. I went with friends and I had a blast. But I will admit, it would have also been nice to get the chance to dance with another guy at my prom. Just saying. The reality is we still live in a heteronormative society, and there is still a long way to go in terms of actually having queer or trans-friendly proms, not just in the US, but in other countries that take their proms seriously, which is most countries, I assume. If we're solely looking at Western societies, fortunately in today's age, the idea of gay couples and other LGBT couples going to prom is overall pretty accepted, and the media also celebrates this. Asia, besides Taiwan and maybe Thailand, is a whole nother situation. Same goes with most African countries. However, I can't help but wonder what impact this pandemic has or will continue to have on proms everywhere in the world. Like, things may never go back to how they were. But one thing's almost certain, at least for me, the narrative of prom being traditional will be long gone due to the emergence of Generation Z, who will one day be the leaders of our world, and they will have the power to make all sorts of much needed changes to policies and legislation. Studies have shown that Gen Zers born between 1997 and 2021 are more comfortable in expressing their sexuality or gender identity than the older generations. So I really think that we will get to a place in time where seeing gay/lesbian/trans couples dancing or kissing in high school prom will be considered a norm. In fact, according to a survey conducted this year, 5.6% of Americans ages 18 to 23 self-identify as part of the LGBT community. So the future is looking to be a lot more colorful than it already is. Thank you all so much for watching this video essay. I really hope you can take away something from this discussion. I would appreciate it if you could like and share this video if you can. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to check out other kinds of content from me. I want you all to have a pleasant day ahead, and I will see you all very soon. Bye!